let's take a look at the hook. So if the jab and the cross are pushing punches in the sense that we're driving forward, weight transferring from the rear foot to the front foot, then the hook is really a pulling punch, weight transferring from the front foot to the rear foot. So to throw a hook with a decent amount of power, I need to load some weight into my front foot, right? So again, we start with the feet. Now, how much weight I need to get in the front foot really just depends on how much power I want my hook to have. If it's going to be emphasizing speed, that particular hook, I don't need as much. And I also won't need to transfer as much weight onto the rear foot, right? So again, we have this range of possibilities. Once we understand the full range of motion, right? So we go to one extreme to emphasize power. Again, all those things can be abbreviated in order to emphasize speed. But if you don't learn that, then you don't know how to make the most of your power. So some people have said, like, you can't teach someone to throw, or you can't teach power. I don't think that's true. I think some people are naturally always going to have more power because of their muscle fiber type, distribution and things like that. But, if I teach two guys the proper technique, both of those guys are going to be getting their maximum power based on their other attributes. And then that's to say nothing about working on the attributes themselves, right? So you can get the most out of the power that you have access to. And so weight transfer is one thing where that's an equalizer because that's skill. That doesn't have to do with how many fast twitch muscle fibers you have necessarily, right? So the easiest way to load my hook is to put my body in the position like I finished a cross, which would basically be the same thing as slipping, right? So again, we're gonna go like middle of the road. We're gonna kind of focus on middle of the road for the most part. This is like my default hook where I'm gonna have a decent load. I'm gonna bring this shoulder forward, right? And ways that I could camouflage this is I just build that into my regular movement. You see a lot of guys who have good head movement, they're able to camouflage that hook because they're always bringing their head back and forth. When I bring my head over here, the body follows, right? The weight follows, and I'm already loaded for a hook, okay? So I'll just move my body here, and now that's loaded. Now this foot is gonna drive. Yeah, people talk about, oh, you don't need to turn the foot in the beginning. It's gonna be much easier to turn the foot. And then even if you're more advanced, you can figure out how much hip rotation you need to create the power you need. But I don't care who you are, you will get more hip rotation if you allow your foot to turn. It just depends on how much hip rotation you need and whether or not it's necessary to pick up your heel. But I guarantee anybody throwing their maximum power, they're gonna need to do that because otherwise it's putting stress on the knee. If I rotate my hip to a certain degree without moving that foot, the knee makes up the difference between the ankle and the hip. And that's not good. So really what you have when somebody's really skilled is they know exactly how much hip rotation they need to get the amount of power that they're aiming for that shot to have, right? And so the more skilled people are, the less often they're loading up for full power, right? Unless they've got somebody hurt and they're trying to finish, right? But in that case, guess what? The heel's gonna pick up. So my heel's gonna pick up, my feet are gonna turn in the direction that I'm generating power, and then my knees are gonna do the same thing. So when I started, this heel's up, this heel's down, that's gonna switch, boom. So I'm transferring that weight. Head's over here, over this foot, head goes over here, over this foot, okay? And then again, I have to make sure that I'm also in hip extension, getting my hip in front of my knee in the direction of the power line, right? So the power line, the orbit of my power is going past the target. So my body, right? My body, hips, shoulders, chest is gonna start to go past the target before the punch even lands. So hip, good tension in my core, tucking the pelvis under. right amount of tension in the core, and then I'm increasing the knee bend to receive the weight onto my rear legs, right? So now what's happening with the hands, the shoulder, first of all, right, it's up, gives me better shoulder mobility in there, better internal rotation, that'll take some stress off my shoulder, less impingement, and it's also protecting my chin. I'm coming across after stretching out. So I'm reaching out towards the target, like pretty much to their shoulder, but I'm not cocking back. Again, I don't cock back, I open forward. It still puts me in that final position. Look, now if I back up, it looks like it looks the same as if I had cocked back. So I'm still achieving that orientation between my body and my arm, because cocking back does make power. That's why people cock back. But if they're, if they're untrained, they're cocking back. And obviously that's making the shot very slow and very telegraphed. But if I start moving everything towards and past the target, and in this case, I'm really pulling away from the target. I'm going to stretch out past their chin and then snap across their chin, pulling with the bicep. So there's different, there's different forms of hook. My default hook, and I think to have the most efficient power, you don't want to push. You don't want to be extending. I would only extend if I was otherwise going to miss, and I just need the length, right? So everything can be modified on the fly. But if I judged my range the right way and I want to have maximum power, then I'm going to be pulling with my bicep, not pushing into the shot, okay? So then when I put it all together, you see it load up. What I mean by load up in the upper body, right? So this leg's loading with weight, but then the load up that you'll feel in your upper body is this stretch of the chest. I want to stretch. I don't want to force it with the chest. That's what they call an arm punch if I force. So I really want to stretch open so my chest is opening. Boom. And then I'm coming back quick though so that I don't over-rotate, expose my back, put myself in a bad spot against their right hand that might be coming after that. If I miss, the right hand and the left hook are enemies. Okay, so again, load the weight onto the lead foot, transfer, my head leans offline this way now, that gets my body weight going, which makes it easier for all the rotation to happen, hip extension to happen, boom, right, popping that hip, boom, and then snap, okay? And then in terms of this orientation, it depends on my range. The longer, right, the further away they are, the longer I need to make my hook, the more I'm gonna go thumb down, right? But I don't wanna do that lightly, because the more that I keep my thumb up, the more engaged my bicep is, the more pull that I have. Then the other consideration is like, which knuckles are you landing with? If your range is correct, you can still land with the big knuckles, okay? So, but I'm not a stickler about the thumb position. You have to find that for yourself, but you want to be able to pull enough. Some of the best guys, right? What they do is they're actually turning it over. So they're starting thumb up and they're finishing more thumb down. And so there's that little corkscrew, that little turn over on that shot, right? You just don't want to you don't want to do it too much, because then you're dropping your hand. So boom, and then coming back on the same path that you came down, right? So that's going to be a good mix of speed and power. And then you might think, well, that's going to put me far away if I lean away. That's when we need to get into our footwork, where I do a little shift. Typically when I throw that hook, I want to be moving out this way anyway. So then my feet make up the difference for how much my head leans back. And I'm not jumping. Again, I'm dropping, but I'm picking my feet up. So it might look like I'm jumping, but I'm actually picking my feet up, and my level's only going lower. It's only going lower. Right? I'm not actually jumping. I'm dropping, and I'm picking my feet up. So that's a skill, you know, that needs to be developed. But in my opinion, that drop and then that stomp when the weight transfers suddenly over to where it needs to be, that's the most efficient way to add power to your shots, because you're just yielding to gravity, right? And that's free energy for you, almost free, to utilize that. So a lot of boxers have talked about this. This is why they don't get tired, you know, other than the thousands and thousands of reps they have on punches. But those thousands and thousands of reps are getting them this kind of efficiency where they're using their weight transfer and dropping their weight to create power without forcing it just with muscular effort. So hopefully this helps. Feel free to ask any questions down in the comments. Thanks for watching The Way.